Welcome to Commit and Push, the podcast about how great software really gets built. I'm Damien Filiatrault, your host and the founder of Scalable Path. Each episode, I talk with founders, developers, and leaders about the decisions, trade-offs, and hard lessons behind successful digital products. Let's get into it. All right. Today, I'm sitting across from Micah Johnson, who's the co-founder at Biggest Goal, a company that builds AI agents for companies. And not only do they build AI agents, they train members of those companies from the senior leadership down to lower levels, how to build agents, how to leverage RAG, and how to get things automated overall. Micah, welcome to the Commit and Push podcast.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I thought a good place to start would be to just define what AI agents are. We read about them a lot. We talk about them, but I don't think most of us could actually give a concise definition of what an agent is. So that's where I'd like to kick it off. What would you say is an AI agent?
I'm probably not going to go by the book definition,
Okay.
Just what we see in real life all the time and what we're building. So an AI agent is essentially an AI-powered tool that you give instructions to and give tools to use, and then it makes the decision based on its instructions and the model that you chose for it, what tool I should use in which order, and then when am I done with this? So if you're normally chatting with AI, you chat with it, it gives you a response. You chat with it, it gives you a response. Agents, it will look at its instructions, look at its tool, do something, and then kind of like circle back to itself and go, did I do everything I was supposed to do? And keep going through that loop until finally it goes, oh yeah, I'm good. I got everything done. And then it moves on.
Right. And that makes sense. I mean, one other thing I would call out, it's not even something that has to be kicked off with, an instruction per se. It can be hanging out, listening to different things, checking out its environment. And then when certain things happen, an agent can decide to take action on its own.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you built agents that are like that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So really common scenarios are, let's take like a project management system like Monday or ClickUp. When certain things happen in those systems, that's going to trigger the agent. The agent's going to get the information from that event happening and then take action on that based on its instructions. So you don't even have to say, oh, this is now approved. Now I'm going to go to the agent. Now I'm going to give it information. It's just sitting behind the scenes and taking care of it for you.
Yeah. So you're just configuring your project management tool to say, hit some endpoint, and that endpoint will notify the agent, and then It'll look through its tools that are available and decide what to do.
Yep. Exactly.
Cool. I mean, what are some of the other common agent use cases that you find that companies are wanting to do to use agents to automate?
There's quite a few. There's certain things that people wish agents could do yet, and they're not quite there yet. And then there's a good solid chunk of things that can actually be done really well right now. Simple data analysis is a really great one. So for example, even internally, we have all of our hours that our team works, it's tracked in a time tracking software. Well, there's an agent that sits behind the scenes that every day at midnight, when everybody's sleeping, it goes and gets the month-to-date hours, it analyzes it, and it sends us a Slack message. So every morning, the entire project management team, account management team, and leadership team knows where all the users are, where everybody is in the team, knows where all the clients are at, and it's already calculated stuff out so that we don't have to do the work. We can just take action on it.
Mm-hmm. So you've got your team using task trackers that are in real time. So at the end of every day, they've got all their hours in. I love that.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. And if you take that concept, okay, we have data somewhere, we need to pull it, analyze it, action it, do something with it, or even say, what are my key takeaways from this? killer use case for agents. Like, fill in those gaps in your business all day long with tiny little simple agents that are easy to build.
Yeah. I mean, that doesn't even really seem like it needs AI. Like that seems like that particular task seems like it could just be like a cron job that like pulls the hours and then looks at them and summarizes the hours and then goes into Slack. Like you probably use an agent for it because you're doing agents all the time. but like, that seems like something that it wasn't necessary to have an agent for. What are like some of these other use cases that you need that AI
well,
to
let's
make
take
decisions?
the time tracking one step further, because if you were to just say, what are the hours, how much over are we? Sure, we could calculate that, and you could use traditional automation or any programming language to do that. But what if you wanted to analyze it? What if you want to create a 4 bullet point list? That's where the AI piece comes in, because it's actually going through and saying, wait, I need to look at this data and then I'm going to do my analysis on it. So we took the daily one step further and said, well, what's a month over month analysis look like? Now we have much larger data sets. We want to see what clients are leaving, which team members were added. Are there any anomalies? All the stuff that we would normally have to do as a person, we would go in there, and then we get the key takeaways, which is the written analysis, kind of executive summary standpoint, that's what gets delivered to us.
Got it. Any other common use cases that you are seeing?
Yeah, analysis is a big one. I would say other use cases would be things like actually getting in, and when we, this probably opens a can of worm, but when we get into like chat bots that can access RAG databases and vector databases, that's a huge use case. So simple example would be you have a Google Drive folder of all your SOPs. Well, you can make a AI-friendly database of all those SOPs and have an agent that can access that database that can also chat with your team. And so your team can go to the agent, go, how do I fill in the blank? And the agent's going to write its own query, go to the database, pull out the information, synthesize the response, and continue the chat based on what the person is looking for.
Yeah, that's one of the topics we wanted to get into today with RAG, retrieval augmented generation. I guess we can dive in there. Let's go deep on this use case, what would you do to convert your Google Docs into a data store that's friendly to an agent to search?
The cool part about where technology is right now is you don't have to do anything. So you can leverage a tool like Raggy, and there's a number of other like basically vector databases or RAG databases as a service platform that will connect to SharePoint, connect to Dropbox, connect to Google Drive, and sync all of that information, all those documents, and automatically generate an AI-friendly database and keep that in sync as you're adding files, editing files, or removing files. You don't have to write any code. It's amazing.
That is very cool. So you would just say, take into account this folder or these folders in Google Drive, and then it would look at all the content in there. Is that essentially what you do? Give it a folder?
Yeah, that's spot on. Yeah, you organize your folders the way you would normally organize them, and then tell a software like Raggy, hey, look at these and create a database of SOPs from this folder or this set of folders. And then that gives, within minutes, that gives a database available for an agent to come and connect to it and say, well, what information do I need to find out of that?
That is super cool. Now, do you know or care how Raggy is working behind the scenes?
Yeah, I mean, so this gets into the technical side of what is a vector database and how does it work.
Yeah, I want to talk about that.
Okay, let's go into it. So at its core, if you're familiar with like a relational database, which most everything runs on these days, where you have tables of data and then one ID, references another ID in another table, and it creates a relationship. A vector database is a whole bunch of chunks of information instead of tables. And so if you were to say, take an SOP and embed that into a vector database, what's essentially happening is, first step is you have to create chunks of data out of that document. And it's just chunks of text, chunks of text, chunks of text. And then they each have essentially their own fingerprint, which is kind of like their ID in a relational database. And that goes into the vector store. And then there's metadata.
And the vectors are for those fingerprints, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so they all have relationships to each other. How related is, text block A versus text block B? And when a query comes in, it also runs a similar algorithm that goes, all right, find me the most relevant text blocks that are related, or chunks of text that are related to this query, pull that out. And that's how you stay within context windows. So you're not pulling out a 100-page document. It's like the AI skimmed it, or the database skimmed it really quick and goes, oh, here's the 3 or 5 chunks that relate specifically to this query. But each of those chunks have metadata that relate it to the original document. So then the AI can go, oh, well, I know what the original document is. Now I can find that part, get more information, write better queries, whatever I need to do, and the cycle continues. But
so the agent will do that. The agent will make an initial query, find something in a few docs, then get back, then request those entire docs, then review that potentially.
If you give it the instructions, yeah. Or it can give you the link back to the original doc. So as a human, you can go, oh, let me dive in further myself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. When you've built agents, like, how many tools are you giving an agent access to in general? Like, what, just in a range? Is it sometimes really simple and it's just that one tool, or like a RAG agent just goes to Raggy and that's it,
Yeah. So this is a great question. It totally depends, but agents are so much like interns that just started at a brand new business. So if you give them too many tools, too much information, load them up right away, they get overwhelmed and they're just going to start making up stuff and say, okay, I think this is what you mean. Sounds good. Let me give that back to you. And that's the hallucinations you hear about. That and giving too much information, hitting the context window. So a really good practice is keep it as narrow of a focus for an agent as possible. So a RAG agent might have one access point, one tool to a specific partition in a Raggy database, and that's it. A chat trigger, the AI agent, and one tool that can completely run. So in a vector database, you can say, let's say you have SOPs as you might have some SOPs that would be relating to client-facing stuff, and then you might have some SOPs that would be for like HR, like how do we pay executives here? You don't necessarily want to mix those two data sets. Or another example might be, hey, we've got our product information and data, but we also did some competitor research. So we have that data. And that'd be really good information for an agent to have to help us write some marketing material or help us steer things in different ways. But we don't want to mix those two data sets, because then when we ask about product information, the agent's not going to know, is this competitor information or is this our own product information? And so you create a partition, which essentially it's like a bucket. So one bucket might be our own product information, and another bucket or partition might be competing products information.
So a quick pause here. I wanted to tell you a bit about why I started my software staffing company, Scalable Path. Back in 2008, I was working on a client project with some developers in Argentina, and I saw how amazing it was working with people in my time zone who were just as available as people in my office. So in 2010, I started Scalable Path to help companies take advantage of this underutilized talent pool. And since then, we've built a platform of over 40,000 developers, and we've placed over 600 of them with over 300 clients. So if you're looking to hire top-notch dev talent at a fraction of the cost of hiring locally, visit scalablepath.com/commit. And as a listener of the podcast, you can get 20% off your first month. I'd love for you to give us a try. So you just refer to that all as one vector database that has these partitions. Okay.
With separate partitions.
Yeah, cool. All right. Well, that is super interesting. And Raggy or tools like that, they do a lot of the stuff behind the scenes for you, or do these agents, like I was reading about, how Rag works, and, I was reading about how it may, do different cycles where it would like make it a certain query, kind of like what you said, but then get some results and then do another layer of like reprioritizing or something, which I didn't really fully understand. But
yep.
And another tool we can talk about is like N8N. Because I know you're using that a lot and we're using it internally. Let's just stick on the Rag subject. When you're using Raggy, like, is it sort of just super turnkey where it sort of does a lot of this stuff internally for you, or do you have to do a little bit of that in N8N where you like get stuff back from there and then refine and then ask it again?
So it's a little bit of a combination. What Raggy creates turnkey for you is if you didn't use a vector database as a service and you wanted to leverage a RAG strategy, you would need to manually create all the workflows to create the embedding. So add stuff into the database. But cool, what happens if you have a database of SOPs and you want to make updates to those SOPs? Well, now you have chunks of data and metadata. You've got to write all the workflows to figure out, well, which chunks do I actually need to update? Or do you delete everything from that document and then re-index? And then when you remove files, well, what's the triggers? What are the workflows on that? You've got to write all of that. So the syncing alone is a huge piece to it. But tools like Raggy, they go a little bit further. And it's almost like, I guess my best analogy would be a little similar to how Google would index stuff in keywords, right? So when you do make queries to the database, there's this extra layer of indexing and keywords and weighting that helps make sure you get the most relevant stuff. And so there's that layer on top of it. Raggy also has an MCP server, so they have tools that help connect AI agents directly, and there's that layer to it. So as they're building up their offerings and other tools like it, you get all of that turnkey, built in, baked. And so you just say, new connection, what folder am I connecting it to? What API key am I using? Done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is super useful. All right. Well, do you want to dig a little into N8N? I mean,
I'd love to.
It's funny. There was it seemed like it would be, like they made it like it should be nation, like N8N, but then they don't say that, they just say N8N, which kind of confused me at first, but anyway.
So I might be wrong on this, but I thought the original guy that made its name was Nathan, and that's where the name came from. Maybe that's urban legend at this point. I've never verified that, but I've heard that multiple times now.
Interesting. Did not know that. But yeah, what you want to just describe what it is and why it's cool and useful?
Yeah. So N8N is very much like Zapier, Make.com. It's a way to create automated workflows. What makes N8N stand out and why it's gained so much notoriety in the past 12 months alone? It's been around for a while, but last 12, 18 months, it's been absolutely skyrocketing. There's a couple of things. One, it's open source. So you can literally get the community version, stand up your own server, install it, and start running automations. And the only thing that you're paying for is the hosting of your server.
Is it running? Do you think it's running like LangGraph underneath?
It is.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool. And so that's one thing where it's like, oh my gosh, that is a huge difference compared to signing up for Zapier. The other thing that has just made it stand out is it is my opinion, the fastest and the easiest to build almost anything in, whether it's traditional automation or AI agents. And they were the first to the market with super easy, what's an AI agent? How can I automate this in a tool like Zapier, but friendlier and faster? And then have continued iterating on that. And so since then, Zapier's added AI agents, Make's added AI agents, but it doesn't really come close to the ability to craft something fast. So to kind of put some numbers to what I'm talking about, to build an AI agent with a RAG database with Raggy and N8N, I can do that in about 15 minutes, maybe less.
Yeah.
And that's just super hard to beat.
Yeah. And just that is super cool, but I want to take just a step back and just describe a little. For some people that have never even used N8N, what's really cool about it is sort of the GUI, right? The
Yes.
user interface, right, where you can sort of create this workflow, this visually like a flow chart, and you can say first do this and drag nodes around and construct this workflow visually that will then kind of describe the internal workflows that your agent uses, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So you've got RAG agents, and are you using N8N on all your agents? Do you ever not use N8N when you're building agents?
No, it's all been N8N. It's
Yeah.
just so, and a big chunk of it too is maintenance. So it's really, and it was interesting when you made the comment of like, oh, we could, do you really need an agent for that? In some cases, you don't, but I would still lean towards making an agent because one, it's faster to build, and two, it's easier to maintain. So a really like, I guess maybe a simple example is if you need to change something that your agent is doing, you literally just change the prompt in plain language. You're not reconstructing anything, you're not recoding anything.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a good point. I mean, yeah, you could have done this thing you mentioned with the timesheets and Slack with a cron job and some code, but you'd have to have a developer, write a cron job and put that into freaking some, infrastructure as code thing that deploys to or your GitHub repo and then have a deploy script that goes there. And,
Totally.
It's like, not only is there a ton of overhead to all of that, but you don't even need a developer. Like I was just reading an article today about how AI is like a leapfrogging technology because there's like in Africa, what is leapfrogging? Like in Africa, people didn't have they had they said they leapfrogged like the PC era, right? They like everyone was using like landlines and then they went straight to mobile phones, Part of that was like the leapfrogging of telecommunications. They went from like no communication to having cell phones. They never had the landline, right? It's sort of like AI is like taking people that never even learned to code and now they're coding on the cutting edge using AI. They never had to go through all the intermediate steps. And some of us that I just did it on this podcast, some of us who, did it the old way. Now that's our first way we think of doing it. And you know what? That's not even a good way to think. You've got these no code tools. I mean, you could consider N8N just a no code tool.
Totally. Yeah.
That lets anyone who doesn't even have a programming background do cool things and write software.
I was going to say, something along those similar lines, because I see this every day. When we're training teams at companies, it's not just the development team or the IT team or the tech guy or the tech girl on the team. we're training CEOs, we're training COOs, we're training CMOs, we're training directors, we're training managers. And I say a long time ago, let's say 3 years ago, I would work with companies and we'd say, all right, we don't want to go from idea to execution anymore. You've outgrown that. We need to build scalable systems. We need to build the right repeatable standardization, all of that kind of stuff. So there's going to be some steps between idea to actually jumping right into execution. And speaking of leapfrogging, it's almost like AI brought all that back. And it's like, oh, hell no. Now, yeah, you got an idea, just go straight to executing it because you can. And as a leader, as a, C-level exec, like if you have an idea, prototype it out. Try to get that idea in some tangible working space with the help of AI. It's absolutely insane to see what people can do right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of conversations about that, about how AI is a great prototyping tool. And I guess if it's just a simple thing, like a RAG agent, if you're just going to build that, it could actually be more than a prototype. It could be the tool.
It could be it, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's just the trend with AI right now. Is it started as, oh, this is a cool prototype thing, and now it's going to be, well, you can do more complex things pretty easily now, and then it's just going to start eating up from the bottom, the amount, like if there's a spectrum of software that's from simple to complex, it's just going to keep eating it up from the bottom, from the simple up to the complex. And there are plenty of things you can do with it. And there'll be more and more you can do over time.
Yeah.
that will not just be a prototype.
But with that said, what I would say is design and history of experience and knowledge is still paramount, because you can rip stuff out really fast, but did you do it correctly? Did you open up security concerns? Like, still having it's that combination of how do you leverage this with expertise? That is the magic formula.
As you may know, I run a vetted talent platform called Scalable Path, and I'm offering a 20% discount to listeners of the podcast. So if you're interested in scaling your dev team faster and smarter, visit scalablepath.com/commit. It's kind of a random question, but have you seen AI projects that have failed
Yes.
at companies, and why do you think so many? I think a lot of them do fail, and that's what I keep reading, is that
Yep.
a large portion of these new AI projects are failing. Why do you think they're failing?
I think there's a number of reasons. I know that MIT report came out at the end of last year that was like 95% of AI projects fail. And if you read the report, what they're saying is founders, leaders, C-level execs, they come in and go, oh man, ChatGPT, this is going to change everything. We're going to get our entire team using Copilot, using ChatGPT, using Claude. And so they go and they buy the subscription, and then they tell everybody, now use this. And while you can see like individual increases, if it goes back to what I was just saying, like if you don't build standardization, if you don't build the design right, if you don't have the right strategy, then you're just throwing a tool at a problem, and it's not like nobody's working together. There's no bottom line change to the growth. And so people are like, cool, I have ChatGPT. I don't know how to use this. I don't know how to use Copilot. I don't know what deep research is. I don't know what projects are. I don't know what I should put in this, what I shouldn't put in this. And so it just creates this mass confusion. If we were to change this and say, take AI out of it, for years, I've been seeing the same thing happen with project management tools. A company goes, we're buying Asana, or we're buying Monday. And then they go, hey team, we're now using Asana. And the whole team is like, okay, cool. But nobody knows how to structure it. Nobody knows how to get it past the glorified checklist. Nobody knows how to actually use the tool to build the scalable system to make it a success. So that's one major thing that I see with AI is that it's like thrown at at a problem, hoping that the tool is so good it will just magically fix
Mm.
all the issues.
Do you cover this sort of thing in your trainings?
Yes,
It's not just how to build agents with N8N and things like Raggy. It's how to think about them or training.
100%. Like these are the key topics in the leadership workshops that we do.
Mm-hmm.
And so we'll go and speak to a leadership team, usually for around 3 hours, and talk about stuff like this. Like, all right, cool. Everybody's chatting. And a lot of times it goes, whether you paid for ChatGPT or not, your employees are using it. So there's that. But second of all, how do we get them past just individual small gains and actually building standardized systems? How do you, as a leadership team, work together and make the right decisions to escalate this to make this a success instead of just hoping everybody can figure it out on their own?
Mm-hmm. Have you done projects where you're helping people integrate AI with their existing software, like their existing SaaS software?
Like something that they would build themselves?
Yeah, maybe they have a product I think a lot of people, myself included, have existing software that might be internal or it could be customer facing. Let's just take customer facing as an example. And now we have LLMs and now we have agents. And so they're like, okay, how do we put this into this product? And you see it
Right.
popping up in the products that you're using,
Yep.
like, and you see them and you're like, it's like a little couple stars next to something and you're like, you push it and then nothing really useful happens and you're like,
Yes.
you
Yeah.
know, that's how one of the ways I think they're failing is people are like, how do we use this? Everyone's kind of figuring out where to put it into their products. And we're even having a similar challenge internally. You think, we're building, we have this job description tool where, everything in my business starts with a great job description when you're trying to find a great developer that fits your needs.
Yep.
And we're like, how can we use AI to make this better? And we've been iterating on it for months because how we thought it was going to work, it was like, oh, well, like when we get the quality that we want, the response time is too slow, but we don't want it to be low quality. And so we have to like change the UI so it's not expecting like an immediate response. And it's like this
Yeah.
really nuanced thing. I mean, are you working on that sort of thing with clients, or
Not
is it
not too much.
okay?
We stick almost exclusively to like operational stuff. So sales ops, marketing ops, just direct ops, um, and the workflows behind all of that. So how do you actually execute inside your org to get this done? That's usually our sweet spot. We have a few clients that have their own pieces of software. Strategically, like we'll offer some guidance, but we wouldn't sit there and be like, all right, well, this is how to code it, or we'd help you implement something directly into your software. We stay away from that.
Yeah, I mean, it's smart. You have a pretty broad audience base by doing that. My niche is a little more, hardcore software.
Yes. Yes.
Type of people who are building custom software. Well, I feel like we dug in pretty good to RAG and N8N and what agents are. Was there anything else you wanted to hit on here?
No, I mean, I think that's the key. I mean, for anybody that's listening that hasn't looked at N8N or agents, like it's a great place to start where it's low risk, right? Like you can sign up and play around with stuff and you're not going to break anything. You don't have to like get too far into the weeds to see like, all right, is this something that might help my business or not?
Mm-hmm. And we've mentioned the fact that your company does trainings. where should they go to get in touch with you or find out more about the trainings that you do or the services that you offer?
Yeah, our website is biggestgoal.ai, and you can definitely get in contact with us on that. We have cohorts actually launching in February for both project management and AI. So we've got active ones going on right now. We've been upping the frequency at which we do them almost to once a month.
Awesome. Well, Micah, you're working on some cool stuff, and thanks for sharing it here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
My pleasure. All right, let's do it again sometime.
Sounds good.
Well, that's a wrap on this episode of Commit and Push. If you found it valuable, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. And if you're building a team, check out scalablepath.com to find top developers. Until next time, keep building, keep pushing.